Let's move to this now. Last year, Decode Communications launched the South African government leaders in cabinet and provincial executive councils on Twitter report. This report is a tool that looks at the presence and activity of leaders and their spokespeople on the social media platform. This year's report providing findings and recommends ways to improve citizen engagement and information sharing by government leaders on the platform. Let's speak to CEO of Decode, Lorato Ntshenkeng, who joins us live now. Lorato, good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. Let's talk about the leaders. I know that in the past there have been some kind of suspect behavior when it comes to how they use the social media platform Twitter. Are they getting better?
Some are getting better, Bongiwe. Good evening to you and to the viewers. And others are getting worse. And you know, so when we launched this report, it was really premised on, or at least out, because we've done work with the Department of Public Service and Administration. There's a program that they call the Open Government Partnership. And in there are a number of values, including enhancing transparency, public participation and accountability, and fighting against corruption, right? And if you think about public participation in particular, and it was started back in 2011, and a lot of the engagement was, you know, in person through Imbizos and a number of other activities. We then thought that, you know, because this is still a program of government, let us see how government leaders fare in particular, you know, as far as Twitter is concerned, primarily because, you know, it's one of those that journalists use a lot more.
Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. It's not in your report, but I'm going to ask you this because I know you spend a lot of time on that particular platform. Talk to us about some of the repeat offenders who are not getting better.
The repeat offender is Minister Fikile Mbalula in particular, Bongiwe. You know, he has unfortunately been, you know, somebody who I guess he's known to be that combative, right? Or at least he responds in a way that a lot of people don't consider it to be professional. Take, for instance, this past Sunday when the City Press published a report around the state of railway lines. And one Kalni House decided to take him on, suggesting that you know the state of the railway lines are rotting as a result of the lack of Minister Mbalula's leadership, and you know, without repeating the uncouth and ugly words that he used in that response, he did that, right? And it's worrisome. Of course, we had seen before Minister Tito Mboweni, before he resigned. There was a time when he had a tete-a-tete with Premier Makura around the e-tolls, and that's something that you do not expect that two government leaders would have a tete-a-tete on Twitter instead of having a conversation in the background to deal with the issue that affects you and I.
Now, we're in the midst of a pandemic, and I know that government departments have also been trying to use social media as a platform to speak to people. How have they fared when it comes to spreading the message across? Because we are seeing quite a lot of adverts and a lot of, you know, boards that they're putting out on social media.
So the Department of Health generally, particularly through their social media channels, that they are doing relatively well. But if you consider that before the now ex-Minister of Health, Minister Mkhize, he had a presence on social media and Twitter in particular. So whenever there would be briefings, like Dr. Joe Phaahla had a briefing today, they would also use Twitter to re-emphasize some of these messages. For me, what is disappointing is to see Dr. Joe Phaahla, you know, or at least the team that is working with him, not making an effort to create an account for him, so that, because we know that a lot of them don't, unlike Minister Fikile Mbalula, they do not manage their own accounts, right? They have teams that are doing it in the background. So it would be good to see Dr. Phaahla doing that. One of the people that are doing exceptionally well when it comes to messaging on Twitter is the Minister of Health the MEC of Health in Limpopo, Dr. Popira Ramathuba, right? And even in our report, she's one of those that her following has grown significantly, precisely because of the the proactive and responsive communication that she puts on.
Now, Lorato, it's one thing for us to be having these conversations tonight, looking at the communication and how those in government are going to, in fact, are communicating and putting their message across. But one of the things that I found interesting in your report is that you talk about how, this may even be a cost-effective way for government to be able to communicate, especially during a time like this, a pandemic or any other, stories that they need to put across. And I find that point very interesting, especially when you look at the monies that we saw, being put in the spotlight when it comes to digital vibes.
No, absolutely, Bongiwe. And a lot of us bemoan what we saw, at least in the report of the SIU report when it comes to digital vibes, right? Charging for the minister to conduct interviews. Any right-thinking PR professional would ordinarily charge a fee for counsel, but not necessarily to pitch an interview on a media platform, let alone for a number of those items that Digital Vibes had charged the Department of Health. What was done there was an absolute travesty, corruption of the West order, and we hope that it never happens with any government communication program. Right? As far as social media is concerned, Bongiwe, there are a number of advantages. The first one is that the production that goes into putting together, some sort of communique, whether it's an infographic, a small video that you put on a Twitter, and again, Twitter only limits you to about 2 minutes and 20 seconds per video. So it then means that your production costs become lower, right? But secondly, the cost of putting stuff up. If anyone wanted to put an ad just after this interview on SABC, there's a rate card that the sales team would give to them, and it costs them a little bit more. Whereas with social media, it is not that much. Of course, I raised the concern, Bongiwe, that it's unfortunate that money that would be going to a platform in South Africa, unfortunately, it would go to a platform like a Facebook or even a Twitter that are not in South Africa. So perhaps what we need to do, the South African government need to do, is to tax them more so that a lot more of that money stays onshore.
Interesting analogy there, Lorato. Thank you so much for your time this evening. That was Lorato Ntshenkeng. He's the CEO of Decode Communications. Let's move to this now.